Goodbye, Alice. We're gonna miss you. We're gonna miss you, Alice. Lily will come check on you. We're gonna miss you. Oh, do you have big feelings about us leaving? Okay. Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am back from vacation. I have my Victoria, BC shirt on. I had great plans of doing a vlog while I was on vacation, and it started great and then it just fizzled out. So I'm not going to do a vlog, but I'm going to kind of talk you through our vacation, maybe put some pictures and little video clips up. Won't take very long, and then I'm going to do a little mini book haul of books that I got when I was in Victoria, not Vancouver, Victoria. So we left on August 11th, 10th. It was a Sunday, whatever day that was. We had to leave on a Sunday because I had book club on Saturday. So priorities. And we drove up and we stayed a couple nights in Silverdale, Washington, which
right now there's a whole area of the ship that I haven't explored yet. Storage.
We're coming up to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Thank goodness it is not a windy day.
I climbed down the ladder to the lab and then farther downward into the dormitory. My friends are still there, still dead. I try not to look at them. I scan the floor for any hint of an access panel. Nothing. So I get down on my hands and knees and crawl around. Finally, I spotted a very thin seam marking a square directly under my nail.
Puget Sound.
I can't even rub my fingernail into the seam, it's so thin. There were all manner of tools in the lab. I'm sure there's a flathead screwdriver.
Oh, this is Tacoma Narrows.
This is the Tacoma Narrows.
Hey,
yes, I know that, but I was looking at the body of water.
Panel. Specify aperture.
Which my husband's from Holsbo, which is the next town over, and his aunt and uncle live in Silverdale. So we were able to see family. One of the big things that we always do when we're there is we go to Sly's Bakery and get donuts. They make the best apple fritter in the world, and that's my favorite. So I'm sure there's a good picture up right now of my kids and the donuts. The big ones that they're holding are Viking donuts. Those are huge. They seem smaller than they used to be. And that might be because my kids are bigger, or they might be a little smaller because they don't need to be that big. They're huge. But my kids love them. And so we had a lot of family time. The kids, my husband's brother, the kids love them. They played lots of games. It was great. And then we went, so we were there for 2 nights, and then we went up and we stayed the night in Sequim, Washington, not Sequim, Sequim. And the reason we did that is because it's close to Port Angeles, which is where the ferry to Victoria is. My computer's doing weird things here. Hold on a sec. And we had, you have to be there at least an hour early. I didn't want to rush and get there from Silverdale, which was like an hour away. So I said, let's just go spend the night up in Sequim. We stayed at Holiday Inn Express. We are big fans of the Holiday Inn Express because pools and continental breakfasts. All our hotels have breakfasts. That was an important one. And the kids had a great time in the pool. Great hotel. It was great. Then next morning, we drove up to Port Angeles, and we got in line early because I'm an early bird. Drives my husband crazy. He likes to be there right at the time you're supposed to be there. I like to be there early, but that worked out well for us because when we got on the ferry, we were parked such that we were the first ones to get off of the ferry. There's more shots coming in to the harbor in Victoria. There's a boat. I don't know what they're doing, if they're oh, I think they're fishing. It looks like they have big poles coming in. There's a fancy boat over there. There's my husband refusing to get in the car. The kids had a great time on it. They would go out. It was choppy going out there. And they would go out and they would like jump and have the wind carry them back. They had a great time. I stayed inside because I've done all that before, and I just wanted some peace and quiet. So I put my headphones in and I read for a little bit. I listened to one of my booktube prize books. We get to Victoria. We check into our hotel. If you want to ever check into a hotel, or actually, we did not immediately check into our hotel. We immediately kind of drove off because we were there early. And our first stop was, of course, at Tim Hortons. Now, this is where I realized that you have to be aware with Google Maps, because I've got a Tim Hortons up on Google Maps, and I kept saying, it's 900 feet ahead. I remember thinking, shouldn't we have passed it? And I realized it's 900 meters in Canada. So there you go. Took us that was a little bit of an adjustment. We went to Tim Hortons. Now we can say we've been to Tim Hortons. And then we drove out west on the island just to kind of sightsee, and we ended up at this park called Potholes, where it's like a creek or river, and they have swimming holes, so the kids got to go in and go swimming. There's a lot more to the park than that, but that's just where we went. And the kids had a great time swimming. And this is one of the stories that will live in our family because it's a great story. My husband and I are watching them. We had not planned to do this, so the kids didn't have towels or anything, but they had their swimsuits. But you can see they were trying to get in, and they were kind of not really sure-footed. And I pointed that out to my husband because, they're walking on rocks. And my husband goes, well, they've never been in a real river before. And I said, well, they have been swimming in the Mississippi. My husband turns to me and says, that's not a real river. That story will live forever because Mississippi is a real river. Anyway, they had a great time doing that. And then we headed back to we went to check into our hotel. We also had plans that night. So we checked into our hotel. If you're ever going to Victoria, the Embassy Inn is a great place to stay. They're super nice. It's pretty affordable compared to other hotels there. Great continental breakfast. So we checked in there. And then that evening, what did we do for dinner that night? I can't even remember what we did for dinner that night. Anyway, that evening we went, we had Burger King. That's what we had. That evening we went on a ghost walk around Victoria, which was interesting. I love these little ghost walks. Usually when they're done by like a company like this, they're pretty tame. And this one was pretty tame. My daughter is still very much a skeptic about ghosts. I am not. But it was a nice little way to kind of like tour the city and get some history. So we did that. That was our first day. Our first day. Our second day. What did we do our second day? Our second day, we went up to Butchart Gardens, which has been a bucket list item for me. I have always wanted to go. I have been to Victoria before when I was a kid, but my father was not going to a garden. He just wasn't. That was not a thing we were going to be doing. So my husband never been either, because when he would go up to Victoria, he lived a lot closer to Port Angeles. He lived up in Paulsbo, as I mentioned. They would never take their car, and they couldn't figure out how to get out to Butchart Gardens because it is a bit away without a car. So he'd never been either, but we went, and it is worth it. It is. I described it to my daughter as the Oregon Garden, if you've been to Oregon. And I've done a video of the Oregon Garden. You can go back and see it. Maybe I'll put it down below. And, but it's like the Oregon Garden, but on steroids. It is absolutely gorgeous. It was so beautiful. I loved it. I would go back. I bought a calendar so I can watch all 2026. I can look at pictures of it. It was wonderful. And then we came back and we drove some more. At this point, the wind is starting to come in a little bit. We knew the weather was going to change while we were there. So we had kind of planned it this way to do outdoor stuff on the first 2 days. So we drove around. We like to drive and explore things that way. So we did that. We went back out to the west. My husband was looking for beaches that the kids could go down to. They went to two. We went to two. One we went to, and my knee, as I've talked about before, I've been having trouble, and it's, go down to the beach. And I went to the first one. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing another one. And so we went to the first one. The kids went and they played and, threw rocks, everything. Went back and we went to another one, which was actually a lighthouse, and I stayed in the car for that. So I got a lot of reading done there. And I'm going to talk about the reading in a second because that was an issue for this whole trip. And then we came back home. We went for Syrian food for dinner because that was near us. We don't want to eat in the really touristy restaurants. We wanted to eat somewhere a little less touristy, and this was kind of showed up and it was good. The third day was the rainy day. So we spent the morning at the Royal BC Museum. Which was just like 2 blocks from our hotel. It was just right there. This is a great museum. I remember going to it as a kid. And one of my favorite exhibits is this one where they've kind of recreated an old town. And that is still there. And I was so excited to show my family this. It was great. And the docents there, docents there were so helpful. Well, everyone was helpful. It's Canada. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. So we did that, and then we went for lunch at this place called Tractor Foods, which was one of the best sandwiches I've ever had in my life. It's a healthy food restaurant. And then we went book shopping. So the bookstore we went to was called Monroe's Books. And here's the bag, Monroe's Books. And I kind of was looking, it's like, oh, it's founded by an author. That's really cool. That's as far as I went in my mind with this. And we go in, it's a really nice shop. It's a little narrow and long, so it was a little bit crowded, but that's fine. And they had a Canadian book section, which you can see. Found it.
So it's this artist in Vancouver, Charles. He makes like illustrated, this like really cool stuff. I have one of his pieces.
I had really wanted to buy some Canadian books, so this made things really easy for me. So I'm looking through the Canadian books, and I will go into the books I got in just a minute, but then I came along this picture. And that is the first connection I had made between Monroe Books and Alice Munro. Now, Google Alice Munro if you don't know what the issues are. But I don't read Alice Munro anymore. And so that was just sort of a thing. I really liked the way the store handled it. And I will say right now, that I had no qualms about shopping at the store at that point. I mean, I still don't, but from what I knew at that point, because at that point I was under the impression that this was a store that had belonged to Alice Munro. I had no qualms about shopping at that store. She has passed. I want to support independent stores and the people who work there, so I didn't have any qualms about shopping there. Now, I have since learned, going on a bit more of this, which makes it even less of an issue, is that that bookstore didn't actually belong to Alice Munro. It belonged to her ex-husband, not that husband, the other one. And when he retired, he left the store, or he gave the store to his long-term employee. So I really don't have any problem shopping there. There was no Alice Munro juju here, and I really liked the way they handled the Alice Munro issue there. Now I'll give you my one complaint about that store, which I'm still like totally perplexed by. Go to a bookstore in Canada, and they do not have, because I was going to buy my daughter something, they did not have any books by L.M. Montgomery. They did have a collector's edition of the Blue Castle. That was it. But I was going to get her the Emily series, Emily of New Moon, the Emily Star series, or maybe Anne of Green Gables, which she told me she had actually never read. She had watched the Anne with an E series that was on Netflix that ended before the book ended. So like there's a thing that happens at the end that doesn't happen in the series because they never got there. Plus they added a lot to that. That's very loosely based on the book. I'm going to try and get her to watch the Megan Follows one. That one's excellent. But they didn't have any L.M. Montgomery. I went through every possible section. I could not find anything other than that one special edition of the Blue Castle. Like, what Canadian store does not carry L.M. Montgomery? Every American store, I mean, I've never been into an American bookstore that does not have L.M. Montgomery, unless it's like a specialized bookstore, like a science fiction bookstore or romance bookstore or something like that, but whatever. But yeah, that was my one complaint about it, but I did get some books. So let me go through the 3 books. Now, I wanted to only buy books by Canadian authors, and I also wanted to get a few books. 3 was kind of the number I decided on, from different provinces. So I got a little bit more of a variety. So the first book I have is this one, The Observer by Maria Endicott. I'll read the back. And this one takes place in Alberta. Even though it won the Saskatchewan Book of the Year Award and the City of Saskatoon Book Award, it's set in Alberta. When Julia arrives in Medway, accompanying her beloved Hardy on his first position as an RCMP constable, she tries to explain her new life to old friends from the city, but can find no shared vocabulary to convey this rural reality, let alone police life. As Hardy disappears into long days at work, Julia takes a job as editor of the local newspaper, The Observer. When she chronicles the surface joys and sorrows of their new community, Hardy is immersed in violence and loss, and Julia can only witness his increasing exhaustion. Through this new life together begins an adventure. Time conspires to darken and deepen it. Grounded in Maria Endicott's own experience in Mayerthorpe, Alberta. So maybe it takes place in Saskatchewan. That's why I thought it took place in Alberta. The Observer is an essential story about the fragility of life and law in a tight-knit community from one of our most beloved storytellers. I've never heard of this author before. So discovered a new author. So that's the first one I got. Now, the second one I had heard of, I think this book might actually be on the list of possibilities for my marginalized authors book group. And this one takes place in British Columbia. And that is All the Quiet Places by Brian Thomas Isaac. Now, the reason why I think it might be on, and I'll have to check, I haven't checked yet, on our list is because it was longlisted for the Canada Reads list. And we frequently go to the Canada Reads list to find authors, mostly Indigenous authors, to put on that list. So that's why I think this one is on that list, but I'll have to check. So it's 1956, and 6-year-old Eddie Toma lives with his mother Grace and his little brother Louis on the far edge of the Okanagan Indian Reserve in the British Columbian southern interior. Eddie's mother is determined to have him learn the ways of the white world by sending him to school in the small community of Falkland, while she challenges the Indian agent and writes feudal letters to Ottawa to protest the sparse resources in their community. His father returns to the family after years away, only to bring chaos and instability. Old friends Isabel and Ray join them in an overcrowded house. Through the turbulent, unpredictable years of his childhood and adolescence, it is only when he is in his grandmother's company that Eddie finds solace and true companionship. So that's this one. And then this last one, I'd never heard of The Observer either, but I'd never heard of this one. It reminded me a little bit of what I've seen of it, of The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. And this is set in Ontario. And this is The Paper Birds by Jeanette Lynes. And this is where my Monroe's bookshop bookmark is. Gemma Sullivan lands a coveted office job in the summer of 1943, only to discover that she's been hired to work in a top secret code-breaking office in an unassuming house in Mimico, Ontario. The cottage, run by the brilliant, eccentric Miss Fearing, who was trained at England's Bletchley Park, pulls Gemma in with its urgent lure and mystery, but along with this job comes a lifelong oath of secrecy. Jem can't tell anyone what she does for work, not even her elderly Aunt Wren, who has raised Jem since the age of 3 after the tragic death of her parents. Her aunt harbors a deep love of crosswords and tarot cards and an equally passionate hatred for war since the death of her own fiancé in World War I. The last thing she'd want for her niece is a job that involves anything to do with the war. The code breaking is intense and at times mind-numbing, but as Jem is pulled deeper into wartime intelligence work, she becomes an integral part of the codebreakers' circle. The cottage code-breaking unit is small but determined, and to be successful, they must learn to work together. But when Jem begins fraternizing with a handsome prisoner at a nearby POW camp, who later disappears, she risks losing everything. So that sounds like The Summer of My German Soldier. Do you remember? That was like a big book for like when I was like, I don't know, middle school age. Anyway, so that is the last book I got. And let me talk a little bit about my reading before we go into the rest of our trip. I didn't get much done other than audiobooks. So my husband he doesn't like it when I read in the car because I'm not paying attention to him that way. But we can do audiobooks. So we did listen to all of Project Hail Mary, and we started Sunrise and the Reaping. which is a little bit of an issue now because we've only gotten halfway through it and the whole family is involved in it. So I don't know when I want to just finish it, but I don't know when the rest of the family is going to be. We can do it all as a family. It's a thing. I did get a little bit of reading done in my other stuff as well, but you know, lots of times when we came home at the end of the day, I was just too tired to read anything. So I just, you know, on the ferry, I would read stuff. When I was waiting in the car because my knee was not behaving, I could read some stuff. So I was grabbing time here and there, but I really didn't get time to read or watch booktube videos or answer comments, other things I had hoped to get done. So that's how the reading went. So other than audiobooks, it really didn't that much, but I'm back. And I will say this now, I'm starting a vlog today to make up for this. I'm doing a week in my reading life to kind of make up for the fact that I didn't do a vlog for vacation. But anyway, that is that. Okay, so then the next day we get on the ferry and I'm so sad to leave Canada because we're going back to the United States. And I think it is very telling that as soon as we went back to the United States, our vacation plans went to crap. I love Canada. I would become a Canadian in a moment. I would. Being in Canada made me realize how broken the United States is. Because in Canada, there is a base level of consideration that is just expected, and it's there. People talk about Canadians being nice, and that's true. They are. Now, I'm going to say something like, I realize that there are probably some really mean Canadians. There probably are. There's also loads of really nice citizens of the United States. There are. So I'm just sort of talking about a very general society issue here, not personal levels. But things like I'm filming my kids and people will kind of bend down so they're not in the picture. Like, Americans don't do that. I know that because later that night, my husband walked through about 4 people's videos, even though I kept telling him not to do it. But there is just a baseline of consideration that we do not have in the United States. There is a baseline of accepted behavior we do not have. And if you don't believe me, it is completely proven by the fact that we have not once but twice elected Donald Trump president. If we had that baseline, he would never have gotten there. He would never have been elected. Now, before you go on and say, for those of you, well, we couldn't vote for Hillary. First of all, that's horribly misogynistic. And Kamala too. Horribly misogynistic. Also, not the point, because he shouldn't even gotten to that point. There were a lot of Republicans running in 2016, yet that is the one they chose. And all of those Republicans, except maybe Ted Cruz, they operate with some level of decency. And they were all rejected. And the fact that twice now we have elected this man who has none of that. He has, as a nation, we don't have that. And I don't know if we've ever had it, honestly. And I don't know how we could ever get it, which is really sad. So anyway, back to the United States. We get in the United States, we pull into Port Angeles. My husband starts complaining because he hates Port Angeles. As I said, he's from Pulsbo. Apparently people in Pulsbo hate PA. So our plan is to head south on 101, which kind of goes sort of by the coast, down to Aberdeen, which is on the Washington coast. So we start doing that. We go through the city of Forks. That means nothing to me. I don't care about... This is downtown Forks. I think you can hear Project Hail Mary going on in the background. I have seen no sparkly vampires. Don't really care. Everyone's super excited that when they go to this town for vampires. I don't know. Again, not my... Ooh, but there's a Sasquatch. Killer Sasquatch. Not my thing. But, you know, hey, there you go. There's the Forks thing. There's my husband. It's nothing to me. I don't care about sparkling vampires. You can hear it in this little video clip I'm going to put. Now, if you are someone who's so excited about Forks because of Twilight, let me just tell you something. There's nothing in that town. It's a nothing town. I mean, it's just like, it's a road down the road. I understand fandoms. I do. I understand that. And when we drove by, every time, I don't know about that, there's always people posing by the Forks signs. I get the fandom thing, but there's nothing in Forks. It's just a little forest town. There's nothing there. I mean, I'm glad for them that they have this thing that's bringing people to their town, but there's nothing there. But anyway, we drove through it and we start hitting, there's 7 of them where they're replacing culverts on the road. So, there's signs saying, slow down ahead, construction, there's, 1 lane, all these things. This is important. We go through 7 of these. And then we get down the road and we are like 2 hours down the road at this point. And this is the first we have heard about 101 being closed. Yes, they told us a mile in advance that the road had washed out. We think that's what my husband was told. We're not sure. That's what my husband was told by the guy who was there, that the road was washed out. 1 mile in advance that this was the case. And so our options were to go, you can tell my husband was still in Canada mode because he's like, we could go 25 kilometers around on forest roads, and forest roads are not really the best roads for minivans, which is what we were driving. So that was one option. Or we could just turn around and go back. We chose option 2. We ended up crashing at my father-in-law's house for the night. So we're back in Polsbo. We got to see them again. We didn't get to go to the beach, but I couldn't cancel my hotel reservations, but they did let me reschedule. So we are going to the beach next month for my birthday. They're gonna go and take that then, and we're gonna go the other way on 101. So hopefully that won't be washed out. Anyway, we thought, okay, we'll get Lynes the next morning and I can go to Liberty Bay Books, which I didn't the first time because it wasn't open when we were there and I didn't want to hang around. I wanted to kind of get on the road. But Polsbo was having a big art festival and the line to Lynes was down the street and we couldn't find parking. So I said, I don't care. Let's just go home. And so we went home. That was our trip. It was really a really wonderful trip, except for that last little part. I wish I were still in Canada. I am very envious of Canadians. You have a wonderful country. I love your country. I would come and move to your country if I could. There's always this talk about Canada taking over Oregon, Washington, and sometimes California. That would never happen because it would involve a war and I don't want war. But if somehow it were to happen, I would be out buying a maple leaf flag the day of. I just would. You guys, I understand every country has its issues. But as I said there, I think there's something rotten in the psyche of the United States that is not in Canada. And there you go. Everyone there was wonderfully nice to us. I loved it. If you want to go someplace on vacation, go to Canada. Victoria is a beautiful city. I want to explore. I mean, I have been to Canada before as a kid. I have never been to the city of Vancouver. I've been by the city of Vancouver, but I've never been to the city of Vancouver. So that's a possible trip. I want to go back to Banff. You should go see Sue Jackson's videos on her trip. She went up to Banff, and I'll link those where she was in Canada. One of my bucket lists of all time has been to go to PEI, which would have been much easier to have done when I lived in Massachusetts, but that's how it works. I want to go to Three Pines. I know Three Pines doesn't exist, but I also know it's based on a real place. So I want to go there. So I'm hoping to go to Canada many, many more times. And maybe sometime I won't have to come back. Who knows? Anyway, that was my vacation. I'm sorry I don't have a real vlog, but I was too busy vacationing to put that together. So there you go. Thank you for hanging on with this. You will probably see these 3 books again when I do my book haul, which is not going to be very long this month. I will mention them again. I probably won't go into detail with them again, but yeah. So yes, so here's what I want you to do. If you've gotten this far, leave me a maple leaf or Canadian flag or whatever. So I know you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I mean, this is always plus. But another thing you can do is leave me your favorite book by a Canadian author that's set in Canada. Because if I can't go there in real life, I will go there on the page. Anyway, like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.